think smoking always affected my daily life because I was a closet smoker. It really sort of controlled my entire day. My boss is the one that recommended Juul, so I decided to give it a try. You don't get any of the odor of smoking. There's no ash all over your car. I would say give it a try.
Get the flavor and satisfaction of smoking without the mess of cigarette ash or lingering odor. Switch to Juul. Check out JUUL.com/sports. If you don't smoke or vape, don't start.
Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Caught Offside with Andrew Gunling and JJ Devaney.
Oh, yes. Caught Offside from the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Andrew Gunling and JJ Devaney. What's up, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. What a show we have coming up for you here tonight. So much to get into. Lots happening in the Premier League over the weekend and into Monday with that Tottenham-Manchester City match. Of course, a coaching change has gone down at the Bernabeu as expected, and really, really as expected after that 5-1 defeat that Real Madrid suffered at the hands of their rivals, Barcelona. Let's see. Yeah, Red Card Man of the Match on this podcast. We have another podcast out for you as well, where we speak with Julian Gressel, rising star from Atlanta United FC, as they prepare for a postseason run that I think a lot of people believe should end in a title. That's debatable, but there's certainly a sentiment out there that they are one of the favorites. There's no question about that. And on that podcast, we also pay tribute to one of our favorite shows of all time, because this Friday is the 15-year anniversary of the start of Arrested Development, a show that is often referenced on this show. So if you are a fan of that show, or even if you're not, and just a fan of the Premier League, we find ways to tie in great Arrested Development moments to the Premier League. So I think you'll enjoy it. But sadly, JJ, we begin this podcast with the story that has dominated the soccer news world over the past few days, and that is the tragic death of Leicester City chairman Vichai Srivaddhanaprabha and 4 other passengers in his helicopter after it crashed just outside of the King Power in Leicester over the weekend, immediately following their match against West Ham. It's one of those moments where you know, not even as a fan of Leicester City, just, a fan of the sport, kind of like, and I don't say this to compare one tragedy to another, but, I had no ties or affiliation to Chapecoense, but there's just some news stories that when you hear them, you kind of just get that initial, gut reaction, that sick feeling in your stomach. And I would say that this rose to the level of that simply because of, the prominence of this individual after Leicester City went on their famous title run. It just became a story that for so many people was such a heartwarming one. And for all the stories that you've now heard since his death of what a good person he was to so many of these players and to so many of the supporters of this club. And it really is just a horrible tragedy.
It's terrible. And I think what's really touched me the last few days is that the media in England has spoken to fans and people who live in Leicester, and the genuine emotion and upset and also the depth of feeling they had for him was something I didn't know would exist or be there, because fans have become kind of hardened to foreign owners in the English game. I know this. I know Vichai was extremely successful with Leicester, but beyond the field, in the community, with the stories we've heard, he really was somebody who was beloved in that town, and the vision of the helicopter taking off has become almost iconic to Leicester City, and it's just so shocking that is the way that this tragedy unfolded. Just awful.
I know, and seeing the pictures from over the past couple days of his son, with Jamie Vardy, his arm around him, and Kasper Schmeichel next to Vardy with tears in his eyes, fans surrounding them with flowers everywhere. It's just, it's difficult. It really is difficult. Now, Leicester City postponed their Carabao Cup match midweek, but they have announced that they will go ahead and play their Premier League match at the weekend. It's on the road. It's not at the King Power. But I guess there was still some question as to whether or not they would be ready for that match. But I think I don't know, to me it felt like the right decision to go ahead with that. I think that in some ways could be almost a therapeutic moment for both players and fans to kind of come together. And essentially do what I would imagine their chairman would have wanted them to do, and that is to go out there and try to win. It
reminded me of the death of Matthew Harding, who was the vice chairman of Chelsea in 1996, October 1996, in a helicopter accident. How eerie is this? Yeah. And he was flying back from a Chelsea match at Bolton Wanderers. So I remember being shocked by that as well. Now I was like you said, you're no fan of Leicester. I was no fan of Chelsea. But he was, again, someone who had helped the club. He put 26.5 million into the club, and he was beloved too by the fans because he seemed like a genuine supporter. And Vichai definitely felt that way too for Leicester.
Yeah. Now, it's one thing for you and I to talk about this, but it's another thing for a Leicester City supporter to weigh in. And for longtime listeners of this podcast, you'll know right away who I'm referring to. Andy May of BT Sport, who has joined us many, many times over the existence of this show, usually in happy times. He, of course, was basically, he almost served as our Leicester City correspondent during their title run in 15-16. We've always enjoyed having him on under happy moments, but this, of course, is a deeply sad one. And Andy, of course, being a part of BT Sport and being a Leicester City fan, we thought would be the right person to speak with in a moment like this to get that perspective. And he joins us now. Andy, what's up, man? How are you?
Hi, guys. Yeah, good to speak to you. Obviously, not the greatest of circumstances whatsoever. But yeah, good to chat with you again anyway.
Yeah, I guess before we kind of dive into some of the deeper elements of all this, just as a starting point, as somebody like yourself who's so familiar with the club and the ground in particular, can you just kind of lay out a general geography for us of where exactly this occurred and whether or not it was in an area that typically would have been occupied with people at that time?
Yeah, so the stadium is in the city centre pretty much of Leicester. Leicester's not a huge city. It's no New York City downtown or whatever, but it's a pretty sizable city, certainly in terms of the UK. And I would say from the absolute centre, it's probably a 10-minute walk to the stadium. And there are many busy roads that surround the stadium. Where it is, it's quite a focal point in that respect, certainly in terms of traffic and vehicles on the road. So the stadium is surrounded as well by car parking lots all around the edge of the stadium. And where the actual crash occurred was in a staff car park. And to be honest with you, I still haven't fully got my head around this. It is an absolute miracle that nothing else happened with other people on the ground, because the match ended at around 7:20 or so in the evening on Saturday, the Leicester match against West Ham. And it was only just over an hour after the match had finished that the helicopter took off. So there were definitely people around, and the actual crash occurred in a staff car parking lot. So that definitely had cars around and had more potential for people to be around, because staff, of course, don't leave on the whistle at a stadium. They have to work for a little while after the match, if they're cashing up their tills or attending debrief meetings, they don't leave immediately. So it's a miracle that only those on board were not just killed, but actually affected. So that's kind of how the stadium sits, really. And as I say, the crash occurred in one of the staff car parking areas.
Andy, early dispatches said that it happened so close to the stadium that even players were some of the first people to see it and to respond. I believe Kasper Schmeichel was one.
I don't know that for sure. I wouldn't like to comment either way, really, and I don't know if we'll ever learn about something that's so personal, whether it was Kasper or anybody else. I don't know. That would be their choice to really speak about that. But inevitably, people were around, as I say, and I think as well, we need to bear in mind it's not just the well-known folk that are involved and close to this. There were many people at that club that we don't even know the name of, who would have been close to Vichai and his family and would have worked with him for a number of years. He was a man who took over the club in 2010, so that's 8 years. So I think we should spare a thought for those who we don't often really hear about from football clubs, who will be just as affected as the Vardys and the Schmeichels of the world.
Andy, you being a longtime supporter of this club, I'm very curious because I feel like you are somebody uniquely positioned to provide this perspective. The feeling around the club before his ownership tenure began as opposed to now, how different of a feel did he bring? How different of an atmosphere? I mean, we know obviously the title that wound up coming under his stewardship and everything that changed after that, but just how different a place was Leicester before and after?
Leicester's always been a great club, certainly in my lifetime. I'm 31. I've lived through the amazing Martin O'Neill days, the survival as well of the club under Gary Lineker and a good friend of mine, John Holmes. They effectively saved the club from going out of business and ceasing to exist. And we've had many ups and downs, including relegation to the third tier, the League One division, in 2008 for the first time in our history. So it's been an absolute roller coaster. But I think with the ties, getting into the Premier League and having some serious money to play with took Leicester to the next level. They really made it possible to be a club that could be not just winning the Premier League, because we never thought that, let's be honest, but we actually thought we could finish above mid-table and maybe get back into Europe again. Not really through the Champions League either until it happened, but maybe the Europa League. So I think they, excuse me, in changed times now compared to the Martin O'Neill days, I think they certainly made the fans believe that it might be possible for Leicester to be a kind of sort of second tier team in the big league, the Premier League. So I think that's been their greatest contribution in terms of a sporting sense. But it's clear as well that Vichai in particular did a lot in the community. He donated money to charity. He, on his birthday, for example, provided free drinks, free beers, free pies, free cakes for the supporters at matches. So he's gone about things differently to many overseas owners who aren't British in the Premier League, who have solely treated it as business, because he's put a lot of money in, did put a lot of money in, and you can't really say he lost it because he wanted to do it, but he certainly didn't do it to make profit. And that's what kind of makes him unique, I guess, compared to some of the other owners that are still in situ at Premier League clubs.
Andy, his reign at Leicester City, if I may just kind of talk a little bit about that, he appointed then sacked managers with reputations as large as former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson and Claudio Ranieri. Is it fair to say he had a rootless streak when it came to things going wrong at the club?
I think that's fair, yeah. I think it is. And he's a successful businessman. If you look at his history, Vichai, he obviously has made several billion, and he was head of the King Power Group, which is a huge company in Asia. So you don't get to that position really and have that success by being overly sentimental. I mean, I still disagree about the Ranieri sacking. I'm not going to say now just because he's died that, I've changed my mind. I think that was wrong at the time. But clearly, he's made a lot of great decisions, or did make a lot of great decisions for Leicester City as a football club. And you have to say, as a fan, thank you very much.
Andy, I'm curious, can you expound a little bit on what his involvement actually was with the day-to-day running of the club? You know, many of these financial backers that these owners are kind of provide the money, and then there's another guy running the club itself. What was his involvement?
He was semi-hands-on. I wouldn't say he was distant, because he was there a lot. He was almost always at the King Power Stadium, but he wasn't there in the office in Leicester Monday to Friday, working away from 7 a.m. until late at night. He didn't have that kind of schedule, if you like. But he was hands-on. Yeah, he was a big part of the plans for the new training centre that is apparently going to cost about £100 million, which I'm hoping will still go ahead. And then obviously the stadium as well. There were plans for expansion. He was a key part of that, and he's been involved in all the major decisions. So yeah, he was a hands-on owner, definitely.
Andy, the insular nature of British life right now, and in particular in football, is not that welcoming of outsiders, particularly those who come in and take over football clubs. But this man seemed to be universally loved at Leicester. Now, I understand 2 championships, particularly the Premier League, is going to do that, but he seemed to move beyond the sphere of football. Can you just put into words what exactly his impact was on the town of Leicester outside of football?
It's been huge what Leicester have achieved, and not just the winning of the title, the great escape before that, and getting promoted as well to the Premier League under Nigel Pearson has had a huge impact on the city. Visitors come and go in greater numbers than they would have done before. And there genuinely has been, because of Leicester City, a feel-good factor in the city. And I think, to be honest with you, Leicester's always been a very close-knit city, and it's always been very diverse in terms of ethnic minorities and its cultural makeup. So that's always been the case. And that wasn't really something that the Thai owners really had anything to do with. But the fact that they've also come in as well has just made it even better. So, yeah, it's a great place to live, Leicester, as a city. And the success of the football club is a huge part of that, as well as the rugby club as well. So there's a really rich sporting feel to the city.
So, Andy, what happens now? Does the son assume ownership of the club?
He's vice chairman, Iowat, so that would make sense. But I can't see Leicester rushing. They've got a very competent, very good CEO in Susan Whelan, who's also been very successful with the King Power Group. That hasn't changed. She's still the chief executive officer of the club. Iowat is the vice chairman. They have a management group in place already, so I don't think they're going to rush to make any changes immediately. I just don't think that would be the way they would go about it, the King Power Group. So I think things will remain as they are for now. And yeah, I guess the best way really to honour Vichai from the team's perspective is to try and do as best as they can, of course, this season on the pitch. And that resumes, I think, with Cardiff this weekend. I'm pretty sure that game will go ahead, an away match. And I'm sure the Cardiff City fans, they're a great bunch, will be very respectful on the day there in Cardiff on Saturday.
Andy, last one. Like we said, you're a supporter of this club. You're also a journalist. How difficult was this story for you? I mean, I have no connection with Leicester City, and yet when I saw the news come across the wires, it was shocking. You felt a pit in your stomach. I can only imagine what somebody who's supported the club for as long as you have was feeling upon hearing the news. It's
very sad, absolutely. And yeah, I am genuinely upset about what has happened, but I think professionally it's not too hard, really, if I can speak frankly, to detach yourself when you're in the zone and working. And what is important to say as well is I didn't know Vichai. I met him a couple of times, but I didn't know him, so I would never want to try and claim that I'm as sad and upset as those who, as I say, we don't even know the names of the great working party at Leicester City who genuinely did work with him and know him, and then obviously one step further than that, his family and close friends. Certainly. Well, Andy, we appreciate your time and your insight on this. We always love catching up. Unfortunately, these weren't the circumstances that we love doing it. And I'm sure we'll catch up again later in the season under happier conditions. Thanks, man. Thank you very much. Our thanks to Andy May for joining us under difficult circumstances. It was interesting when I said about Vichai's ruthlessness as an owner. I should probably put that in a bit of context. His first appointment was Sven-Göran Eriksson, who had a huge reputation from Lazio and also from the English national team. But Sven spoke in the aftermath of this tragedy, saying the way he hired me, but also the way he fired me was really like as not tasteful, but as properly conducted as that could be, which is kind of speaks to the man. And I'm sure it was jarring for Leicester fans to lose Ranieri, but I have no doubt that this man who's passed away has definitely did the same thing with him. He seemed to have a lot of class about him in terms of the way he ran things, and he was described as extremely generous and warm by people like Martin O'Neill, by lots of other people associated with Leicester City. There really wasn't too much said about him in that you could construe as negative. And let's be honest, the job of an owner of a football club usually attracts some amount of negativity, and he seemed to have handled his job extremely well. Yeah. So our condolences, of course, from both you and I to Leicester City, to the club, to their supporters on a really, really sad day for the league and for that club specifically. More Caught Offside coming up after this.
My name is Lauren. I'm 33. I didn't want my identity to be the smoking mom. My first experience with Juul, I do remember being like, this is good. It's like a cigarette, but not. I don't miss smoking at all. Like, I can officially say it grosses me out.
Juul is the tobacco alternative that delivers nicotine satisfaction without cigarette ash or lingering odor. Make the switch at JUUL.com/sports.
Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Oh, back now. Caught offside. All right, brother, there's a lot to get into from over the weekend in the Premier League. We start with a little Monday Night Football. Tottenham and Manchester City.
Quite literally Monday Night Football.
Yeah, I know. I'm at least I was at least pleased with one element of this. After what happened with the Tottenham Inter Champions League match, when I had asked you to not tell me the score, and then you went ahead and did. Oh, no, that was not Inter, Manchester United.
Yeah,
Tottenham.
get it right. If you're going to slag me off, get it right.
I asked you again, and you never said anything, which was very kind, but I didn't tell you as a backup plan. I muted all text messages from you until after the game, until I had watched the game at home. But I avoided the score. It's not an easy thing to do.
In this modern world.
Every website, Twitter, but every time your phone buzzes with a text message, you kind of have to, like, out of the corner of your eye, look at who sent it first and then think, okay, well, they wouldn't be texting me about this. So then you check. So I did manage to do it. So a little motivational message to all you kids out there. It can be done.
I did pay for a plane to fly over this building with the result afterwards, but it was too cloudy.
And lucky for me, I work in a room with no windows. Bang.
Sums up your life, really.
Let's talk about the game because I'm feeling really, really conflicted after it. And I know I've probably started so many Tottenham-related segments on this podcast with that sentence.
You never start with any kind of joy or positivity. It's always some kind of battle.
Well, look,
some kind of struggle.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be filled with joy after a loss. You know how
a page from Dante's Inferno.
You know how I mock Tottenham's their prominence in the moral victory cup. And the moral victory table. So I'm not going to sit here and talk about any moral victories. Look, I didn't think they played horribly. In fact, it was terribly frustrating at the end when Eric Lamela
shanked,
just fired one over the bar that really, I mean, let's be honest with one another. He should score. Now
he should score, but honestly, that's pinged at him, and it took a lot of bobbles on that freshly rolled or whatever they did to it surface.
The pitch was an embarrassment. There's no way around it.
It was a disgrace.
Yeah, and it's so fitting, too, right? On the heels of the stadium announcement, and then the next game they play in their current stadium, the stadium's a disaster and just not fit for football, for soccer, I should say, because American football was the reason for this. It was just not fit for it, and I'm not going to... I don't want to use that as an excuse because Manchester City were playing on the same pitch. I still believe Lamela should have scored, but I'm not going to go super hard on him because when you see the instant replay, you can see the ball jumps on him a little bit.
David Silva, for some reason, decided he didn't want to score and just passed it when he's like six and a half yards out.
Pep lost his mind on the sideline after that, understandably so. I mean, it's one thing to be unselfish, but it's another thing to be insane. Like, just tap it in.
For a guy who's so aware of his surroundings, it was probably one of the first times that the old Silva GPS failed him.
Yeah, before we get to the bigger picture issues with this, because there are some, and we're going to hear from Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher, who had a interesting and kind of hilarious debate on Sky Sports about the current state of Spurs that I found fascinating. But before we get to the big issues, just the things in the game that bothered me. Look, the Lamela moment obviously is the one that you'll remember. But beyond that, in the first half, Tottenham had a couple moments. They were back on their heels. There's no question about it. But they had a couple breakout moments. There was one where Harry Kane, I'm not going to criticize his touch. Maybe it rolled a little further than he would have liked, but Ederson was incredibly quick off the line.
It was actually a very good save. But
I thought so too.
But I think, again, the pitch, it ran on a little bit more than Kane had expected, to be honest with you. But
there's two other moments that I look to that won't really get the attention in the aftermath that when they happened, I thought, come on. So, Kieran Trippier has the initial mistakes, plural. I don't know what kind of header he was attempting to do, if that was supposed to be a back pass or if it was just a header gone totally wrong. So he makes that mistake. Then he compounds it with awful defending against Raheem Sterling. Lets Sterling go around him. Boom. Finds Riyad Mahrez streaking in. Easy goal. Pretty goal. Classic Manchester City goal. So Trippier does that. Now I feel like he's trying to redeem himself, and he gets the ball out on the wing. It takes like that really opportunistic bounce off Benjamin Mendy. And all of a sudden, Spurs now have numbers. And I just, it's not Kieran Trippier's MO to try to score goals. But every once in a while, I feel like you have to. The ball comes to him, and if he's trying to then play a ball in between like 3 City defenders to get to Harry Kane, and it's just not getting through. Don't try it. Meanwhile, I know it's not from the angle that he would like, but like, put the shot on net. The ball probably has a better chance of finding Harry Kane off some kind of deflection if you go across goal and Ederson maybe then deflects it into Harry Kane. Like that, to me, and then Moussa Sissoko had a similar moment down the right side for Spurs. And he plays in a ball that to me was just hopeless. And I remember thinking, just like some of these guys, I know they're trying to be unselfish, but just go for goal every once in a while. So those were a couple things that bothered me for Tottenham in the first half.
I think there's a general botheration with Tottenham in that their fullbacks are excellent at going forward, and Trippier's delivery is just so good. I constantly say that, but going the other way, they have some serious issues. I thought Spurs were good, and I thought the way that they tried to move the ball despite the conditions, and the way they kind of almost played themselves back into the game in the second half was very heartening. I think they caused Manchester City enough problems, but then equally, I mean, Sergio Aguero, we're talking about David Silva. Sergio Aguero missed a shot that I was just scratching my head about. He's cleared, he's turned inside in the box, great breakaway by, I think it was Raheem Sterling again, who was at the key to a lot of good things for City, and he opens it out on his left foot, and it's just the weakest effort ever.
I know.
At Lloris. It was a weird game, I got to be honest. The optics were weird, the atmosphere was a bit off, and it was a game that Spurs could have drawn and taken a point out of it and continued this nice run they're on, but they didn't. I don't think it's terminal, and they move on. And City, again, look, here's the thing for me. For all the huff and puff that Spurs did, they had, 3 shots on goal at home. Manchester City, again, are putting up these numbers. 13 attempts on goal. I think 5 or 6 on target or something to that nature. I don't have the stats in front of me, but the 13 lives large in my mind. They are creating chances against everyone that is above normal. It's usually the average. The average for Manchester City now is 22 shots per game.
Yeah,
this is otherworldly stuff.
I know, but the thing for me with them, so you can talk about their chances created, but it's what they're doing at the other end. Like, I know you say Spurs were limited. City have conceded, 3 goals this season?
Yeah, and I actually don't think that was their finest performance at the back either, but they still kept Spurs to...
It is true, and it's one of those games where if you watch it, the stats don't tell the whole story.
No, they don't.
Because Tottenham had good chances that did not end in shots, but still moments where if you were a Manchester City fan, you were kind of cringing a little bit as you were watching the screen.
It wasn't great, and at times their touch let them down. They didn't pass it quite as crisply as they usually do, but maybe that had something to do with the surface, whatever. One of those games, if I'm a Spurs fan, I'm not going to be crying my eyes out over it. If I'm a Manchester City fan, it's on to the next one.
Yeah. Before we move off of this, I'm glad you kind of raised that point for Spurs about not crying your eyes out over this. Maybe it's just me that being hypersensitive, Spursy Andy.
It's you.
But normally I don't want to say hysterical. I actually do think that I'm fairly measured with Tottenham.
You do a lot of...
But I am a fan.
Yeah.
Like truly a fan, so I have hysterical moments. But I'm seeing reaction from certain people. Steve Nicol. Talking about, when does Pochettino start getting, when does his free pass up? Some of what I'll play in a sec from Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville. And even Mauricio Pochettino himself talking about how this is the lowest point for him since he's been at this club. And I take a step back and I see Tottenham with 3 defeats this season. 1 to Liverpool, which quite frankly could have ended in a draw had a penalty been awarded to Son. 1 to Manchester City, which could have ended in a draw if Eric Lamela taps home like he probably does most of the time. And look, 1 to Watford that I can't explain, but I can tell you that every club this season, with the possible exception of City, is probably going to have suffered defeats like that. And it came in a time when Watford were flying. And that's it. So
I know, but the context of the Eindhoven game and the reverse of the comprehensive shellacking by Barcelona, those kind of things all come together. It's never one thing, Andrew. It's also...
But what is it that Tottenham...
It's a general mood around the club. There's a general frustration from the manager that this thing is in stasis and it's not moving forward.
And look, I'm not blind to that. I said a couple weeks ago on this podcast that Tottenham are getting results, but they don't look as good as they've looked in past seasons. But there's just been this reaction to them like it has fallen apart. Like that is it. Whatever great era we were in for Spurs, certain people are talking as though that era has come to an end, and I just don't see that.
It's anxiousness. There's an anxiety. I'm sorry, there is. When are we? It's all about.
That is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then,
when are we moving into the stadium? We don't know. That's released. We'll get to other issues on the other pod about the stadium.
To me, that feeling then...
We haven't bought anybody. When are we going to kick on? When are we going to, add the pieces we need to be back in as contenders again? There's even the future of some players in question. It's a whole snowballing effect.
To me, that feeling is not born out of what we're seeing in front of us, but what our mind tells us about Tottenham's role in the league. Like Tottenham have... Even in their good periods in their history, I don't think nobody typically is putting them among the ranks of, at least right now, United, Liverpool, Chelsea. You got to say City too with their dominance. People always look at Spurs as eventually things will normalize and Tottenham will go back to being what we have known them to be. But that's just like a feeling in our minds. It's not like that's not what I see when I look at this club. To me, this is a different team. This is not that Spurs team that people are thinking of from the 90s.
No, but the team it is right now is a team that is being in a certain position for the last few years. And there is a next step. And it feels as if certain decisions have been taken. That means that next step has not been fulfilled.
Here was Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher arguing about the state of Tottenham on Sky Sports.
Tottenham, for 30 years of our lives, were spineless and soft. Flaky, rubbish. You could be 2-0 up against them and think you'd win 5-2. That's just the way they were. You just knew that basically one little bit of a sort of a bump during the game and they'd just fall over it. They were pathetic. And basically now we've got the toughest, most resilient, robust Tottenham team that we've ever seen. We shouldn't get tired of them and start...
Well, give them a bit of help. No. So the best team they've had for 30 years, the best manager they've had for 30 years, they're not spineless, they've got a toughness, they've got top players. Why not try and push it an extra level?
The players they probably want to improve that team... Liverpool go and spend £65 million on a goalkeeper. United go and give Sanchez...
Where did Liverpool get the money from?
Hang on a second.
Where did Liverpool get this money
United
from,
go and give
Gary?
Sanchez £400,000 a week. Chelsea go and spend £70 million a goal. Tottenham not going to do that.
Tottenham missed out on Mane through wages. Wijnaldum wages both at Liverpool. Harry Maguire could have gone there and got more wages at Leicester. Because they're not prepared to push the... Now, these are really good players playing. Well, Harry Maguire's at Leicester, what he done in the summer. You think of the impact Mane's had. They bought Sissoko for the same price as Mane. Maybe Sissoko's wages were cheaper. Mane's a far better player than Sissoko.
I don't know. I feel like they're both...
Carragher is 100% right, though, about that next step. And look, there's a £800 million sterling, soon to be £2 billion sterling elephant in the corner of the room.
Of course. And for what it's worth, that does get addressed later in their debate.
Yeah, and we will address it. Actually, it's so weird. I'm even ignoring the elephant in the room because I'm going to go into a bit of detail on that in the next pod.
Yeah.
But Andrew, this is a terrible decision by the Tottenham board and those who are invested with the football, the financing of the football team. It's a terrible, terrible thing that they've done.
Now, the only thing that bothers me a little bit, to defend Daniel Levy for a moment, in what Jamie Carragher is saying is, look at some of the departures from Liverpool over the past several years. Luis Suarez brought in a huge sum of money, and Philippe Coutinho brought in a huge sum of money. So it becomes maybe a little bit easier to spend on guys like Sadio Mane, like what he's talking about.
But we didn't. It's not like we went and spent the Suarez money in the same fashion that we spent this money. I think FSG tried to do it a certain way and then realised they couldn't. Even Klopp was saying, well, we're not going to do what Man City do. We're not going to do what the others do. We're going to try and, buy within our means. And what did they do? They bought a $5 million goalkeeper. See how that worked out. So they had to go and get a big one. They they brought an Estonian centre-back for $3 million or $5 million, whatever it was. See how that worked out. They had to go on Virgil van Dijk. They came to the realisation that Spurs can't come to because they've gone and they've looked way down the line and they've invested in something that was not necessary and was not going to help this football team win. It's really that simple.
What, the stadium?
Yes. Utterly wrong time. It's just the wrong time. Barney Ronay tweeted today about it, and it just resonated with my general reservations about not just Spurs, but a lot of teams going off and building these stadiums. He said, why not spend that $800 million on the team, on footballers and on players, and do what football is for, creating joy and fun and winning things. This team is extremely close over the last few years, and the investment has not been there because why? It's obvious.
Yeah, you're probably right. By the way, later in their debate, like their voices, they were...
Oh, make fun of the foreigners.
No, but listen.
What's it cost? It's not cost them a tenner.
I mean, only dogs can hear that.
We get people
so
from that
funny.
part of England get very high pitched. The Scousers and the Manx, they go up an octave.
What's it cost? It's not cost them a tenner.
It's so fun. Like it's like they've got this like competition as to whose voice can get higher before you can just no longer hear it.
There was a sketch once done about Scouse people by Harry Enfield, and it was, oh yeah, all right, calm down. Basically, that octave.
It's so funny.
What's it cost? It's not cost them a tenner.
Let's see. We move on.
They're very good, by the way.
Yeah,
they're excellent.
Yeah. Crystal Palace, they lose a lead to Arsenal. They were up 1-0. Arsenal then scored 2 in 5 minutes. But Palace do fight back for a 2-2 draw. Pretty exciting game, I thought.
Good game.
Yeah. Arsenal, I don't know how you explain this. I guess I've got to tip my cap to Arsenal in this category, but they've scored 24 goals this season. JJ, 18 of them in the second half. I don't know if that's just some sort of anomaly, like a statistical anomaly, or if that like shows that Unai Emery has instituted some level of like stamina within this club and fitness.
Yeah,
where they're just like in better shape late in games than their opponents. I don't know.
Unfortunately, the late of game was what cost them. It was a mistake late on that cost them. And what impressed me prior to that was the fact that they went 1-0 down against a team that hadn't scored at home, that was ravenous for a victory, and they showed the kind of resiliency that we haven't associated with teams, particularly in the latter era of the Wenger regime. So that was good. But again, it was... I don't think it was a penalty, to be fair. Granit Xhaka's tackle on Wilf Zaha. He's just put a foot in and Zaha's gone for it. Zaha's played for it, clearly. But again, I can... On the flip side to that coin, I can see why it was given. The penalty by Mustafi, if I'm an Arsenal fan, is much more frustrating. I think Leno does a poor job trying to punch the ball away. He's got to get that further away. It ends up in the danger zone. Mustafi still has no cause to dive in, as I think Tompkins or whoever it was he fouled had his back to goal.
Yeah.
So just stand up. He's got to turn into the shot. So that was frustrating. The handball, or alleged handball, by Lacazette for the Aubameyang goal, I've watched it a billion times and I'm not even sure.
You're right. Ultimately, look, if you had a gun to my head, I think he did, but I'm not going to blame any official for not seeing that.
No, and I think his hand was up not to direct the ball on. It was because he was being manhandled in one of those tussles.
Yeah, maybe. I can't tell what his intention was.
I can't tell either. I know Zaha's free kick was brilliant. What I took from this game was two things. I like the way Arsenal are heading. I really do. But there is still, what we've talked about in this pod the last few weeks, and a couple of Arsenal fans have got onto us and said, why are you being so negative? Everything Arsenal does is because they got lucky, because of the chances that weren't scored against them, etc., etc.
Have we said that?
No, what I said was, in terms of expected goals and goals against, Arsenal were giving up a lot of chances, and I just said at some point it's going to cost them. That's all I was saying. But generally, I like the direction they're moving in, but they are still prone to mistakes. Mustafi in particular, Granit Xhaka again with the penalty. The goalkeeper I'm not fully convinced of, particularly on the cross ball. So there's a few areas still there, but generally they're moving in the right direction. The second thing I took was Roy Hodgson deserves more time with this team, because I thought Palace moved the ball particularly well at times and they didn't collapse. When they went behind after having the lead, they didn't collapse.
Yeah. I guess if we're going to get on Granit Xhaka for his penalty, although you're not really getting on him for that. Look, I thought it was,
I
but
don't think
whatever.
so.
It's not worth debating. But he scored a hell of a free kick.
Brilliant free kick.
Yeah,
he absolutely nailed that. That was the definition of putting your foot through the ball. He caught it perfectly. Again, I hate talking about him so much because it seems as if I'm in love with him, but his analysis is so good. David Priest put up a video which just shows Hennessy take the slightest step. Andrew, I'm talking a millimetre to the left, and you'll notice he gets the slightest hand on the ball and it flies into the net. That step kills him.
Game of inches.
Oh my God.
Game of millimeters.
The inches we need are everywhere.
Also, I got to say, and I now say this every week, but I'm so taken with Wilfried Zaha. I love watching him play.
Yeah.
Every time he's on he is fearless. He will take on anybody. He was fouled 7 times in this game. 3 key passes, had an assist, or not an assist, won the penalty that ended up tying the game.
He looks to take people on, and that's a player that's always excited people, particularly in the English game. Going back years, like you had Tom Finney, you had Stanley Matthews, and then coming forward you had like McManaman, Ryan Giggs. Anybody who's got that, he's going to take someone on. His footwork is unbelievable. He created a chance for Max Meyer in the second half where he's just dancing in the corner and then flicks it up, and it's mesmeric.
Yeah.
He is fantastic. And we had a Twitter follower send us a question, when do we think, what's stopping him from moving to a bigger club? I think what's stopping him is Palace don't want to let go of him, and I'm not sure he wants to go either.
I think he has not demanded a move like you sometimes just come to expect these guys to do.
Because he's working on being in that consistent form, and he's been stung before. That time at United was incredibly unhappy for him.
Well, he has grown since then, and look, I'm not saying that
he's grown since then. Of course he has, but
right.
He never got a fair crack of the whip at United either.
Right, that is true also. But look, I do believe that he could go to one of the big clubs and slot in to anybody's starting 11. I really think that highly of him. Here's a trivia question that I have for you.
Trivia.
I don't believe that you'll get it. But I think it's a good question. Since the start of the 2014-15 season, only one player has won more penalties than Wilf Zaha. Do you know who?
More penalties. He's won more penalties than Wilfried Zaha.
Mm-hmm.
Is he in just give me an idea of the table then, I wonder.
The table.
Like what club is he at?
That's a tough question.
Well, has he been up and down? He's been all over the place.
Well, no, he's still with the club, this guy.
Right.
In terms of where that club has been on the table, kind of in multiple places.
1 penalties.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Zaha has won 11, tied with Raheem Sterling. This player has won 13, been awarded 13 penalties. I'm going to tell you in a minute because the silence is deafening.
Go on,
I
can't think.
Jamie Vardy. Now, I thought you would have guessed Eden Hazard. You didn't. You would have been wrong.
No.
So I will retroactively say that you were wrong.
You know what? I should have thought more about that, because Vardy is that kind of guy who plays for it. He pushes the ball past you, and if you make contact, it's over.
Yeah.
You're done. You're done. You just have to jockey him, stay on your feet. You can't even engage him. It's a great shout.
Yeah. Chelsea breezed past Burnley 4-0. 2 things stood out to me in this, and I want to start with this first one, which is Ross Barkley. Because I just said to you about Wilfried Zaha that I believe he could go to any club and slot in. I did not think that was the case with Ross Barkley. In fact, I remember when it was Chelsea and Tottenham that were kind of battling for his services, I almost remember just kind of like brushing it aside and thinking, oh, well, he wouldn't get minutes on Spurs anyway, so whatever, go to Chelsea. And now you look at the way he's playing, and I got to say, wow, do I feel dumb. He's been fantastic for them. He's scored now in 3 straight league matches. He's actually the first Englishman
since
to do
Frank Lampard.
Yeah, for Chelsea in 2013, Lampard. In this win, he was involved in 3 of the 4 goals, had a goal, 2 assists. He's scoring at a rate of 25% of his shots, which is phenomenal. 3 goals, 3 assists this season. He's now been directly involved in a goal every 65 minutes in the 18-19 campaign. He has been a revelation for them.
And he also had a lovely cameo in Betis for England against Spain. That beautiful ball that he played in for Kane for one of Sterling's goals. By the way, they're calling that the boys from Betis now.
Who's calling it that?
Oh, Martin Tyler dropped that one last week, trying to make it a thing.
From that,
because they won a Nations League game against
the boys
Spain.
from Betis. I like it. You know what? We're going with it.
We're not. If you repeat it again, I will reach across that computer and throttle you.
Boys from Betis, and Barkley is one of them. And then the other thing that I took away from this game that, quite frankly, I'm blown away by is what has happened to Burnley, JJ. They've now allowed 21 goals this season. They allowed 39 all of last season. We're 10 games in, and they're already more than halfway to what they allowed in the entirety of 17-18. I don't understand this. I don't know if Sean Dyche has just lost whatever defensive touch he had, or if these players are underperforming.
Don't forget their blocked shot stats last season were through the roof, and it was always going to be hard to keep that going. I mean, Tarkowski seemed to be like a guy in an action movie diving on a live grenade. He was so good last season, and I guess that has stopped. Something's happened to that defence that we probably need to look into. I haven't really thought about it that much. The image from the weekend of them berating Morata when he didn't dive and he didn't do anything wrong was very strange.
Yeah, and he scored in the game. I don't know. You just start to wonder sometimes if guys just have a target on them and become easy targets for people.
Yeah.
And he is certainly that right now. A couple other quick hits before we get to Real Madrid. Man United get past Everton 2-1. Great performance from Anthony Martial. He's now he's getting time and he's playing and he's good. Who knew?
I think we've always known he's good. Daniel Story pointed out in a piece I read on Football 365, Andrew, he started one of United's first 6 league games of the season, a 3-2 defeat at Brighton, and he got an hour. So this is, again, there's no great plan to this. They've put him back in the team and he started scoring. It's not like they always knew. Do you know what I mean? Look at the way he was treated in the summer. I was convinced Mourinho was trying to force him out of the football club. Now, I believe that he's gained some serious bargaining power over the next contract with United, should they want to keep him. The question now is not whether United want to keep him. I'm damn sure they do. But I don't think he wants to stay. Not at this United in its current guise.
Well, if he's going to be playing, then I'm guessing he's okay with it. Now, he did want to leave
but
in the transfer window.
The first, you know the way Mourinho's chopped and changed this with this team, the first sign of trouble, I don't think he can rely on the manager to back him again. I'm just saying.
I'm guessing every player on Manchester United feels that way. You just don't, you can't, it's hard to trust Jose Mourinho having your back.
Luke Shaw, he just stuck in there. He waited and waited and waited and waited, and now he's got a 5-year contract.
Yeah. And finally, Fulham, they got to really be feeling the heat now as they lose to Bournemouth, who continue to roll 3-0. Fulham have conceded 28 goals. That is tied for the most in Premier League history through 10 games with Barnsley of 97-98.
Who were spectacularly bad.
And surprisingly, Southampton of 2012-13, which I would not have guessed because I feel like there were good defenders on
You would have thought it would have been, in the terms of the bad stakes, it would have been a Derby County or Swindon.
Or remember that year with Blackpool, where it felt like they were fun to watch. They scored a lot of goals, but God, they conceded a lot too.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I'm Fulham right now, only I think it was just one shot on target for them. Because okay, if you're not going to defend, fine, that's one thing. But the one thing we look at with Fulham is that they're supposed to be pretty, prolific in attack. At least they were a year ago, and they're just not doing anything.
Do you know what was hilarious? Well, not hilarious if you're a Fulham fan, but remember the piece of analysis I did about their defending and specifically right back? Well, this week Fulham on right back bingo, we had Timothy Fosu-Mensah, who gives away the opening goal from a penalty. Now, Adoy and Ream, we need to talk about them again. They were bad again. And
leave Tim Ream out of this.
I will actually. I'll do you a favour. I won't talk about how Brooks breezed past him like he was a pensioner on his way to the bus stop and some young ruffian was running off with his handbag.
Thank you for leaving that out.
I couldn't even do it. But the two Robbies made a great point about Fulham. They said, they talked about Jokanovic and they talked about the state the team are in. And I said, and they agreed with me through the TV.
Oh, God.
I was like, there's no shape to the defence. This is something, Andrew, that is not being done on the training ground. Like, the two Robbie said, you can get this team organised much more defensively with the personnel they have. They can do it. It's not being done. Or if it's been done poorly. I mean, shapeless. They're anybody's. I know. And they remain, obviously, in the relegation zone, which is frightening for them because you wonder, by the time they figure it out, if they ever do figure it out, will it be too little too late? I think if I inserted you at right back at Craven Cottage, you would exude more of a sense of calm than those defenders.
I have to play centre half. I don't think I have the fitness for a fullback position.
Well, okay, put you centre half. Would you have the leadership skills?
Definitely.
To command a back four?
100%.
Right. Oh, okay, we're going to test that out. Right, so we've just cleared the ball. We're moving out of our own penalty box. I want your best step up. So we want to step up as a line. How would you say it? Go.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry, I'm not a circus animal. I don't just perform on cue. It's just the way I operate.
It's poor leadership skills. You can't even pretend.
I march to the beat of my own drum. That's a leader.
You can't even pretend.
No one tells me what to do. Let's see. We move on now, JJ, to...
You failed your audition for Fulham.
The Classico. 5-1.
The El Clasico.
I would never say that. 5-1 it goes to Barcelona, and it just looked so easy for them. I don't know what the performance needed to be for Lopetegui to keep his job. I suppose Real Madrid had to win. Maybe if they had lost in a tight competitive match, we would at least think, well, he had them up for this game. But no, he essentially, and I hate saying this because I really believe that the amount of time he was with Real Madrid, it's bordering on an embarrassingly short amount of time to give a manager. But we're dealing with Real Madrid here.
It's different...
Zidane was on the hot seat last year after he had won 2 Champions Leagues.
We were saying, was he going to make the summer?
Yeah, so this is who... It's just a different scale when you're talking about Real Madrid, and knowing the way they operate, knowing the way Florentino Perez operates, there was just no way. It had become untenable. Whether it was fair or not, that is almost irrelevant to this question, and you knew that it was only going to end one way, and that is with Lopetegui out. JJ, I saw a stat that Real Madrid right now are closer points-wise to the relegation zone than they are to the top of the table, I believe.
And that's why he's gone. It's. I'll tell you who I fear for. Santi Solari has now got the job.
Yeah, but sometimes it's kind of fun to be like, no one wants to be the guy.
Well, he's an interim. There's probably not that much pressure on him, I guess. But if it goes horribly and he can't get it turned around, could there be an interim for the interim?
Well, I think what they're looking for is a solution to the interim, which we thought was going to be Antonio Conte. It looked like over the weekend that was going to be done.
No, but I've got some quotes for you. So this is how ravenous the media are over there. Never mind, we talk about the fans, we talk about Florentino Perez himself. Sergio Ramos was asked about the rumours of Conte after the Clasico in the mix zone and whether his strong style would help Madrid. I've always said, respect is earned. It is not imposed. We have won everything with managers that you know, and in the end, the management of the dressing room is more important than the technical knowledge of the manager. The management of the dressing room.
I've heard that. I heard that from him, and it bothered me so much.
The most alpha male thing he could say. I run this show. I say who comes in.
Well, that was not actually how I took it. I almost took it as him saying, look, we're a bunch of prima donna babies in this room, so we need somebody that knows how to deal with guys like us.
Well, that's part of it too.
That was how I took it.
But that's part of it too.
Don't worry about the soccer. We'll handle that. But we just need somebody who can come in and manage our massive egos that occupy this dressing room. That was how I took it. Boy, he's something, Sergio Ramos.
I wonder what his relationship is like with Florentino Perez. I've heard it's not great.
Really?
So this could be breaking point here, because if he's seen to be dictating to the board who they may or may not bring in, I guess that's why an in-house appointment like Solari kind of works.
Maybe. I will say this, in terms of the next appointment, I was so nervous all day today because I know how Tottenham operate, and I know whenever there's good news, it means that bad news is lurking around the corner. And when I saw the news about Dele Alli signing a new long-term deal, and I didn't see Poch in the pictures next to Dele Alli as he signed it, I thought, he's on a flight to Madrid, isn't he? And I've just been waiting all day for the announcement. I'm just like I'm afraid to go on Twitter. I'm afraid to go to ESPN FC because I'm just like cringing every time. Just like I know it's going to happen.
Did you know that Santi Solari went to Richard Stockton College in New Jersey?
Yeah, I know all about that. His years there on campus.
Formative.
What years they were. Can Real Madrid salvage this? Like, is this season salvageable? Because look, let's be honest.
Of course it is.
I don't. Well. Really? I don't mean to be like acting in hysterics here, but JJ, Barcelona, they may just lose like 2 or 3 games all season. That's what Barcelona do. So forget about it. The league is lost.
Oh, of course it is.
All right, well then how can it be salvaged?
The bar has been lowered. The salvaging will come through the cleansing of the Champions League, which, let's be honest, has cleansed bad seasons, domestic seasons for them before, and a good solid run that gets them back, at least maybe not into the title race, but at least into the top, into spot 3 or 2. That's how salvaging will be done.
That's good enough for them. I mean,
it's not. What do you mean? What do you think's going to happen if they don't? The club's going to implode. Good enough. This is the moment they're in right now. They're way off.
Right. So say to me
this season.
Not salvageable.
Nothing of this season is going to be good enough unless and the best avenue for good enough will be through the Champions League.
Well, yeah, that's all that. I mean, that's really all that they have left.
Yeah, okay.
But I just wonder if that's even enough. I mean, the fans there have seen that, and I felt like they wanted more. Okay, that's great that you've delivered this for us.
But this club is just, you'll never hit their standards unless you win everything.
I thought Florentino Perez had actually an interesting point in his statement that he released when he talked about how the quality of the player was not matching the quality of the performance. And when you see that they have 8 finalists for the Ballon d'Or, that kind of resonates.
Again, these are issues of attitude, issues of motivation, issues of form, issues of injuries, issues of selling the best player in the world, arguably. It's all come together for them right now. There was a reason Zidane left. There was a reason. He knew things weren't 100% right. And honestly, look at the way they won the Champions League last year. They were fine. They were very good. They scored that spectacular goal. They also had Karius throw 2 into the net. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like they brushed Liverpool aside.
And part of me will always wonder, what if Mo Salah never gets hurt?
All those things.
Who knows? You're right. But look, ultimately, Real Madrid, it wasn't a fluke that they won a title. I don't want to say that.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it felt like they weren't as strong. Like,
Maybe Zidane.
Munich should have knocked them out.
Maybe Zidane kind of pulled a Fergie here.
Got out when the going was good.
Yeah, we always felt like Fergie knew where Manchester United were headed. They won that title, but he knew it wasn't going to happen again. Who knows? Maybe Zidane felt a similar...
Yeah, and we spoke about on our Zidane podcast when he did decide to step down. We talked that there needed to be renewal, and maybe he did not fancy the job of removing a Sergio Ramos who was playing disgusting. He's grotesquely bad. Rafael Varane is taking that disease from him. He's been dreadful as well.
I'm just watching the game over the weekend, and like the way Ousmane Dembele just goes around Nacho.
Ghosts around him. And then delivers a perfect ball.
Oh, yeah. No, Barcelona were great. I don't mean to say that this was about Real Madrid being bad.
Jordi Alba's ball, whether it was intended for Suarez or not, the way he snaps his head back and scores that goal... Like, Barcelona were glorious at times.
And part of me kind of, I don't really want to hear about Ronaldo not being at Real Madrid because, Barcelona were also missing Lionel Messi. That also matters. Real Madrid have had all season to try to adjust to life after Ronaldo. Barcelona have had, a week? And they're still able to put 5 up against Real Madrid? That is a problem.
There was a 10 to 15 minute period before Real kind of quasi settled into the game where I thought it could have been 4-0. And I think if it was Messi, Xavi, and Iniesta that were on that field, and maybe the 2015 version with Neymar, they would have scored 4 before halftime. Yeah. I'm telling you, it was unbelievable.
I think you're right. Let's see, we bring it down the stretch.
Oh, wait.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
Why?
We're going to have the Ray Hudson moment. We always have a Ray Hudson moment. So this was his call for Vidal's goal in the aftermath of Vidal's 5th, the header.
The header, yeah.
Barcelona once again take the Primrose way to goal. The Mohican, King Arthur, awakens his sleeping sword of war for number 5. Typical Barcelona jazz football. Here's your Sketches of Spain. Sketches of Spain being a Miles Davis album.
Ah.
That was the jazz link you did there.
He is a national treasure.
Treasure him.
We certainly will.
Red card.
What do you got?
My red card is Steven Gerrard's interjection at a Rangers press conference.
Jordan, as a player, to hear your manager say, if the players we have right now don't improve and start producing a bit of quality in the final third, my job is to find players that will do it. What effect does that have as a player? Is that a motivational thing to hear?
Well, I think at any big...
I'll answer that. It's a warning. That's for me, that, not him. He's been injured for 2 years. At a big club, you'd expect big players to step up on big occasions and provide big moments. If that doesn't happen, at any big club, the manager and the recruitment, they find better players or players who will do that.
Like, this has been universally hailed. I saw Henry Winter say, it just shows what a clear-thoughted, strong-minded manager he is. I heard you gushing over it when I came into the studio this evening.
I wasn't gushing over anything. I just said I had absolutely no problem with it.
I have a bit of a problem with it. First of all, this is your first management stint. You have to prove that as a coach on the training field, day in, day out, you can mould this team. Regardless of the personnel you have, you should be showing some kind of return. And you can argue that he has somewhat. But Rangers, as we go into November, are in 5th. Dress that up any way you want. I know how they've done well in certain areas in the Europa League. They're in 5th. Second of all, you're at Rangers, who are a big club in name only right now. You're stuck with these guys, Stevie. You're not going to be able to get better players in. So reading these guys the riot act is all fine and good. You come across as a hard man during the press conferences. You look authoritative. You look, confident. You look all those things. But that's not the facts. That's not where you're at. You're not at Barcelona. You're not at PSG. You're at Rangers. And you have to cut your cloth to suit your measure with the players you have. Because you can't spend any money.
Well, this also could be a motivation tactic for the players he has.
Maybe.
Of course that's what it is.
Maybe, but...
And I kind of like him bailing out Jordan Rossiter from having to answer a question that shouldn't have been directed at him.
Right, fair enough. But I just think serving these kind of missives this early in your managerial career, it's a bit... I'm not sure about it.
You are so soft.
I'm not soft.
You're so soft.
I'm just picking it apart, and I don't want to go with the consensus that you don't mess around with Stevie G. Well, Stevie, get out there in the training field, make these players better.
Well, let's see if it works now.
Let's see.
Let's see how they perform.
We should have hit Lampard-Gerrard watch for that.
Don't worry. In the other podcast, we got it all covered.
Okay.
But you're right. We probably should have. We made a mistake, and we apologize. My red card, JJ, was Paul Pogba's penalty taking.
Ugh.
In the run-up to his penalty against Everton, he took 26 steps.
And looked like a complete knob.
He's taken 5 penalties this season and taken a total of 92 steps in the process. That's an average of over 18 steps per penalty.
Yeah, and he missed it.
He did, but he did score on the rebound. He's 3 for 5 on those 5 penalties. One of the misses, like I just said, he put back in the rebound. Here's what Pogba said about it. He said, I always try to destabilize the goalkeeper. Maybe they know how I take penalties. Maybe I should practice to change it if the keeper knows my step. Yeah, maybe. Not just because they seem to have it down, but like that, there has to be a reason that no one else does that.
Simone Zaza.
I think that's the worst one I've ever seen.
Yeah, because he did the high knees.
Right. It was exaggerated, but this Pogba one, I've seen guys take little steps, but it just went on, and I just kept thinking, when is this going to start? And he just kept going and going and going, these little baby steps, and then finally he takes this weak penalty.
You know, he did this really funny thing as well. He went to Instagram and he said, this is how I get to my car. And he got one of his buds to video him going to his Bentley, taking the small steps.
Yeah. That's kind of funny. I enjoy it.
It's not funny.
All right, you've decided for me. Mourinho said, can he improve? I think he can. The goalkeepers know his running. They don't move, and they are waiting until the last second for his decision. So he has to learn from that. But for me, the most important thing is he wants to go again. Which, all right, I can respect that. But
no, the most important thing is he stops the nonsense and scores the penalty.
And like I was watching, you know how people within stadium grounds, they like the one I saw of it was just a guy on YouTube who posted the phone video, and like it's big moment. Manchester United don't score a ton of goals this season, and they're playing a decent side. And this guy has his phone out to take the video, and in it, like, you would think it's tense, but he starts laughing on it. And then, like, the penalty is saved, and then he scores, and everyone's like, "Oh, hey!" Like, it's such like a half-hearted cheer because it was like pure comedy rather than drama or anything like that.
Imagine he got that penalty against Sevilla last year, and he did that.
Oh, seriously.
And he missed.
It just looks, I don't know, he looks ridiculous.
It doesn't look like, but just in terms of, I'm going back to my coaching days now, just in terms of your plant foot is kind of important. If you're doing all those weird steps, you're kind of out of stride. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, so weird.
Caught Offside's man of the match.
What do you got?
You need to be ready to fire up the "until you have a child" drop.
Oh.
Celta Vigo striker Iago Aspas, he of the terrible short corner at Liverpool against Chelsea in the game I can never forget, scored a hat-trick against Eibar after spending the night in hospital following the birth of his daughter. The Spain international opened the scoring from the edge of the box and doubled his side's lead with an audacious 25-yard chip. Brais Mendes increased Celta's lead, and former Liverpool striker Aspas then took advantage of a defensive mistake to seal his hat-trick with 8 minutes left. After the game, referring to his night in hospital, he said, "The sofa was a bit hard." What a man. And I think, Andrew,
until you have a child, you do not understand, okay?
Ugh.
That's how you were when you had Jack.
But
hey,
that is just the most obnoxious.
It really is. But Aspas can do that. Someone's going to score a hat-trick at Celta Vigo or in Spain, and he's going to be asked for his comment, and he's going to go, "Well, did they do it after, having a child?"
My man of the match, JJ, Giassi Zardes. So many fans rolling their eyes right now.
Oh, yeah, so many fans about to tweet, his first touch, but
his first touch, though. JJ, in a soccer culture where Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore are lightning rods, it's easy to forget that Zardes was never far behind.
He should never play for America again.
Always drawing ire of American soccer fans, sometimes warranted, but sometimes not. Sometimes not, people. So I couldn't help but feel good for him over the weekend when he registered his first MLS hat-trick in a must-win game for the Columbus Crew. He actually said it was his first hat-trick since getting one for Cal State Bakersfield back in college. He finished the regular season, with 19 goals. Only Joseph Martinez, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and Bradley Wright Phillips had more. Here is what that third goal sounded like for him.
Hansen got behind Calvo. Giassi Zardes! The hat-trick hero!
American soccer voice. Greg Berhalter reportedly challenged Zardes before the game, and Zardes answered the call. Now he'll hope to continue that as he leads Columbus into the postseason.
I did say at the start of the season, I'm on record, so you can go and check the tape.
All right, we believe you. Relax.
I said that there's a good chance that Higuain and the guys at Columbus would put so much on a plate for this guy that he would score a lot.
And he did. He scored a lot. And we'll see how that continues now. What a weird game that was. We'll talk more about that on our MLS podcast. But with the weather delay and
strange,
like knowing ahead of time, basically, or knowing by halftime what their fate was. Yeah.
But before we get out, I wanted to give him man of the match, but I didn't want to do two man of the matches because you get so angry. Best wishes to Glenn Hoddle.
Yep.
Who is in hospital recovering from a heart attack at the weekend, collapsed in the BT studio, and everybody hopes he pulls through, because I went down. Anyone who's ever talked about him or worked with him said he was an extremely nice man, and I went down a Glenn Hoddle wormhole.
Oh, really?
Andrew, some of the goals.
Yeah, whenever I watch like these Tottenham montages from over the years, some of his are like the real standout ones that you see.
There's one where he was at Monaco towards the end of his career. Arsene Wenger brought him to Monaco. Can you imagine those two together? And Andrew, it's just like this mazy dribble, and he's getting in on the keeper on the left hand side, and you're like, I don't know what he's going to do here, and he just dinks a chip out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. He's a wonderful player, and we wish him the very best.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got another podcast out. You should check it out. Talk with Julian Gressel of Atlanta United FC. Also a tribute to one of our favorite shows, Arrested Development. Hey, this was fun to you, I say.
Take you later, fun boy.
See ya.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Caught Offside Soccer Podcast.